Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment of our program brought to you by Calhoun's. Are you watching the NCAA tournament today? Plenty of SEC action. What about the week ahead? Next weekend, I mean. If you're having folks over to your home, call ahead to Calhoun's, grab a Feed 5 party pack to take home. Barbecue, buns, slaw, beans, even beer to go from Smoky Mountain Brewery, everything you could need to watch the NCAA tournaments next weekend. Calhoun's. Okay. Gentlemen, each year, Phil Steele, the college football writer, puts out the numbers for every school's returning starters. Here and here, right there, you can see the numbers for the SEC East this year. Georgia 17 back, Kentucky 17 back, Vandy you can read for yourself. Down at the bottom, Tennessee with 14. How much consideration should be given to those numbers? And keep in mind, I already know the answer, so choose wisely.
I look at that and I see if the range is 17 to 14, that's 3 guys. I don't think that's if it was 22 to 11, but 17 to 14 doesn't strike me as insurmountable.
Okay. I put more stock into who they are, not how many. Alabama lost a lot of players one year, and they were pretty good. Florida lost a lot of players at the end of the year on defense. Their defense is still pretty good. So I look at more at who they are, not how many.
Yeah, which position, quarterback, which Tennessee has to replace would be one.
I just come back to remember how many times we've sat here and talked about how much Tennessee's offensive line would improve over the past decade, because look at the returning starters they got. Well, it turned out they weren't very good, and they came back for a second year not being very good. So I don't put a lot of stock in that.
Year older doesn't necessarily mean a year better. You all chose wisely. Let's go back and look at these numbers. This actually includes the rest of Tennessee's schedule this year. Georgia Tech, 16 starters back. UMass, 14. Southern Miss, 12 back. Alabama. That's Alabama and LSU have 11 back this year. But look, last year's leaders in terms of returning starters. LSU with 18 starters back last year. They went 8-4. Tennessee with 17, 9-4. I don't think you can put a ton of stock in it, obviously. And I think Jimmy's correct that most of it is who is it?
Yes.
I mean, if you can have a returning quarterback that's a good starter, that means more to me than a good second wide receiver.
Getting Derek Barnett back would be like having 4 starters coming back.
There you go. All right, here's what I really want to discuss in this segment. And we discussed this Fridays during spring practice. Myself and Will Overstreet will join Jimmy Himes, John Wilkerson. It was Vince Ferrara on Friday. Sports Talk, it's the Pigskin Panel, 4 o'clock on Fridays. We talked about this little different angle, but same kind of topic the other day. Which concerns you more? You have defensive line led by Brady Hoke, who's got a pretty long track record. But the defensive line needs to be rebuilt. You lost some bodies. You got some guys who were hurt this spring. On the other side of the ball, you have Walt Wells, who's been here for a year, but that resume, you really don't know what you're getting there. You do know who the bodies are for the most part, but they need to improve. So, you're more worried about Brady Hoke taking over the defensive line or Walt Wells taking over the offensive line? Gentlemen, silence.
I'm more worried about the defensive line, and here's why. I think Brady Hoke's a really good football coach. Now, but let me make this clear. I'm concerned about both. Okay.
Right, yes.
But I'm more concerned about the defensive line because I don't think they have the bodies up front to be a really good defensive line. Bob touched on, you lose Derek Barnett. That's a huge loss. You also lost a couple of other pass rushers in Lewis and Vereen who did okay. I don't trust Shai Tuttle coming back from an injury. I don't know what you're going to get out of McKenzie. You got 2 healthy Letterman at defensive end this spring, 2 healthy Letterman at defensive tackle. I think there's a lack of talent. On the offensive side, even though I don't think the offensive line was that good last year, they still set a record in many respects. They scored more touchdowns than anybody in the SEC, offensive touchdowns, more than Alabama did. And I understand a lot of that was Dobbs and a lot of it was Kamara. I get that. But I think on offense you can still overcome that better than you can if you have a weak defensive line.
I agree. And you look at the stats last year. Look at November. Missouri rushed for 400-something yards. Missouri.
And gained 740.
Yeah, so that tells me that's a bigger concern than, especially when you subtract the guys Jimmy mentioned.
Okay. Yeah, the defensive line, I don't think you know who the guys are or how good they really are. We know what their potential is supposed to be on the defensive line. Kyle Phillips, Darrell Taylor, Jonathan Kongbo, we go through the names all the time. But there's a shorter list to go through. I also think that the offensive line bringing in Trey Smith, at the very least, him being on campus already, he pushes somebody like Drew Richmond. Best case scenario maybe for him would be that he earns playing time because he's that good. So I think there's just so much more to work with.
Yeah, I think your defensive line was terrible the last few games of last year, and injuries played such a big part of it. But it was awful, and that was with Derek Barnett.
I'll go different. I'll say the offense for a couple of reasons. One, I think Dobbs did make your offense look better, make your offensive line look better than it was last year. I don't know if it's going to be Garantano or Dormady, but I'll be interested to see if they have to have the escapability that Dobbs had the last couple of years. If we remember back to the Justin Worley year when he was just getting peppered, I mean, hit on every down, it's every drop back it seemed. We've seen the offensive line struggle to an extent for 2 or 3 years in a row. I think you had some weaponry there that masked it 2 years ago in terms of Hurd and Kamara. John Kelly looks good. I don't know if you have a Hurd, and people don't like Hurd, but remember what he did 2 years ago. I don't think you have anybody of Hurd, Kamara status to help make that offensive line look good. I mean, how many times did we say Hurd and Kamara were getting touched in the backfield, made somebody miss, and then picked up yardage? And then the other thing, you've had that issue to where you had the coaching change, but the other issue is I look at Brady Hoke and I see a guy who, okay, there's reason on the resume to have some faith. Walt Wells may turn out to be the best hire they made this offseason, but for now, I think he and Mike Canales are the two questions you look at on their resumes and go, we'll see. So to me, I'm going to go offensive line, but I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think, let's put it this way, I think the two places where you need the most worry at this moment, offensive line and defensive line. Because I think if you've got good line play, you can mask a lot of the other stuff. You can make the other stuff work. All
That's
right.
why I think Garantano will probably win the job, though, his mobility. I think you're going to need that as much as you did a year ago.
Which is scary with a freshman or with a redshirt freshman. Okay, when we come back, how much weight, pun intended, can you put on Rock Gulletson and your strength coach? We'll talk about the physical changes to the Tennessee football team. How much of a difference can that make in one off season in terms of the record? Come on back on the Sports Source.